The film opens with a girl named Annie running from something. We never see what's chasing her, but she's clearly terrified. She jumps into a car and speeds off, constantly looking in the rearview mirror to see if it's still following her. As the evening turns into night, Annie sits down alone on the beach, shaking with fear. She starts crying and calls her mom and dad. Through tears, she tells them, "Mom, Dad, I love you so much. If I've ever hurt you, please forgive me." In the next scene, we see Annie's dead body on the beach. It's obvious she didn't die by suicide. Her body clearly shows signs that she was murdered. The scene then shifts to Jay and her friends. They're excited because Jay has finally decided to date someone and is meeting a guy for the first time. She hopes to have a nice, normal conversation with him, but the guy acts strange. He keeps asking Jay, "Do you see that girl standing behind you, staring at me?" Jay turns around to look, but there's no one there. That makes her think something isn't right with him. Suddenly, the guy grabs Jay and rushes her out of the movie theater. Jay keeps asking him questions. "Is something wrong with you? Are you hiding from someone?" But he doesn't respond. Despite his odd behavior, Jay agrees to meet him again after he insists. This time, they go to the beach. He talks to her for a long time, then seduces her, and they get intimate in the car. In the next scene, Jay wakes up tied to a chair inside an abandoned building. She's horrified to realize that her kidnapper is the same guy. Panicking, she asks him, "Why are you doing this? Are you going to kill me? I'll give you whatever money you want. Just please let me go." The guy replies, "I don't want your money. I kidnapped you to warn you. If I had told you everything before, you never would have believed me." Jay demands, "What was so important that you had to kidnap me just to explain it?" He tells her, "For the past several days, ever since I got close to a girl I didn't even know, I've been seeing something, an entity. It follows me everywhere. It scares me. It tries to kill me. Then I found out that this entity is actually a debt, a curse I got when I got close to that girl. And now by getting close to you, I've passed the same curse on to you. From now on, the entity will appear to you instead of me. It will try to kill you, and if it succeeds, it'll come back for me. So be careful. Try not to get killed. And one more thing. Never go anywhere that has two exits. Places with two ways out make it easier for the entity to appear, and that's where it often succeeds in attacking. If you get tired of being hunted and want to get rid of it, you can pass the curse on to someone else, just like I did." At first, Jay thought the boy was joking. It all sounded insane, but soon she actually started seeing the entity on top of a building, taking the form of a terrifying person. She was completely shaken. The boy then drops her off at her house. Her friends had already filed a missing person report because she had been gone for so long. When she finally returned, the condition she was in deeply worried them. The police questioned her, and Jay told them about the boy who kidnapped her. An investigation began, but they couldn't find anyone by the name Jay had given them. Later, after reviewing CCTV footage, they identified the boy's real face and realized he had given Jay a fake name, probably to prevent her from ever tracking him down again. Several days pass. Jay stays close to her friends, and during that time, she doesn't see the entity. Slowly, she tries to return to her normal routine. One day in college, while everyone is focused on their lectures, Jay notices an old woman slowly walking toward her outside the classroom window. Her heart drops. She immediately recognizes it as the same entity she had seen before, the one lurking behind curtains. Terrified and panicked, she rushes to her friends and tells them everything. One of her friends believes her, but Paul doesn't. Still, seeing how shaken she is, they decide not to take any risks. Paul chooses to stay at Jay's house that night. For a while, everything seems fine, but late at night, they suddenly hear strange rattling noises inside the house, as if someone else is there. Paul decides to go check it out. Jay is sitting in the lounge when she sees a soaking wet girl walking toward her from a distance. She immediately realizes it's the same entity she saw before. This time, it has taken the form of a beautiful young woman, but its walk is still terrifying. Jay freezes in fear and starts screaming. She runs away, stumbling as she rushes up the stairs. She almost falls, dropping things along the way, but somehow makes it upstairs. Hearing her screams, Paul and his sister rush into her room. They go inside and stand against the wall while Jay continues screaming hysterically. Paul and his sister can't see anyone, but Jay can. Right behind them, the entity has transformed again, this time into a very tall man. It slowly moves closer to Jay. Terrified beyond control, she jumps out of her bedroom window, grabs her bicycle, and rides away as fast as she can to save her life. Shaken and panicked, Jay rides to a park and sits down, lost in fear and confusion. Now she realizes that everything the boy had told her earlier was true. As she sits there trembling, she suddenly feels someone standing behind her. Startled, she turns around, but it's just her friends and her sister. They came looking for her. She quickly walks up to them and tries to explain everything. Paul and his friends, who didn't believe her before, are now forced to take her seriously after seeing how terrified she is. While she's explaining what happened, she suddenly freezes again. Her body goes stiff as she sees someone approaching in the distance. She thinks it's the entity once more, this time in the form of a young boy. But this time, everyone else can see him too. That means it's not the entity. It's actually Jay's neighbor, who is also her classmate. He had been noticing her nervous and frightened behavior at school and around the neighborhood for quite some time. He walks up to them and asks what's going on. "Can I help you?" he says. Jay and her friends tell him everything. After listening carefully, the boy tells them that if they want to end this nightmare, they need to go to the house of the boy who started it all. Obeying him, they go to the boy's house, only to find out he moved away a long time ago. They search the house and discover a photo of him, which gives them a clue about his school. They head there, gather information about the girl, and eventually track her down. They desperately want to know everything about the entity and the curse. The boy finally sits down with them and agrees to cooperate. He explains that it all started when he met a girl. For a long time, he lived in constant fear of the entity. It stole his peace of mind and ruined his life. He even lost his job. At first, he made up his mind not to harm anyone else or pass the curse on. But one day, he felt forced to do it. That's when he met Jay while coming up with a plan. He tells them that if Jay wants to survive, she'll have to pass the curse on to someone else. Not knowing what to do, they quietly head back home. To cheer Jay up, they take him to the beach. Sitting together, they discuss involving the police or even a shaman to figure out what's happening. While they're still talking, Jay suddenly sees the entity again, this time disguised as a beautiful girl. Before Jay can react, the girl grabs him by the hair and starts pulling him upward. Friends watch in horror as his hair is yanked into the air. Paul realizes that if the entity's hand is that high, it must be standing right there, but he can't see anything. Guessing where it might be, Paul grabs a chair and swings it at the invisible entity to save Jay. This only enrages it. The entity then picks up a ball and throws it into the water. Everyone is terrified. Because of the ball, it briefly releases Jay. Desperate to survive, they run into a room and lock the door. But someone starts pounding on it. When they look down, they see their neighbor, the same person who had just insisted that no one was outside. Before they can react, that same person transforms into a small child, revealing he is also the entity. The child suddenly charges at them. Panicking, they unlock the door and run out. Jay, completely overwhelmed with fear, jumps into a car and drives off while the others chase after her, trying to stop her. Meanwhile, we see the entity slowly moving, still following them. This reveals that the entity has a weakness. It can't move fast, which is why it always reaches its prey late. At the same time, Jay's friends try to stop her, but Jay's mental state is so unstable that she can't hear anyone. She gets distracted while driving, and her car almost crashes into another vehicle. At the last second, she swerves to avoid it and ends up crashing into a field. After that, Jay is admitted to the hospital. She is still extremely shaken. Her neighbor, Paul, can't stand seeing her like that and tells her, "I want to help you. Give it to me." Jay, completely exhausted and fed up with everything, initially agrees. But once she passes it on to him, she starts to regret putting someone else's life in danger. The boy reassures her that nothing will happen to him. Because of his sincerity, Jay begins to develop feelings for him. A few days later, Jay asks him if he has seen the entity. He replies, "No, I haven't seen it yet." Jay completes her treatment and returns home. One day, while sitting by the window and staring at her neighbor's house, lost in thought, she suddenly notices a strange figure walking outside. She realizes it's her neighbor, but something about his movement seems off. She immediately understands that it's the same entity she has been seeing. The entity begins knocking on the door, and Jay desperately tries to stop it. She attempts to call her neighbor to warn him not to open the door, but before she can reach him, The entity breaks through the window and goes inside. Jay rushes to the boy's house to save him. She knocks on the door, but no one answers. So she climbs in through the same broken window the entity used. As she approaches his room, she sees that the entity has now taken the form of her mother. Jay screams, "Stop! Don't go inside!" But the entity doesn't listen. It continues knocking on the boy's bedroom door. Meanwhile, Jay was screaming at the top of her lungs, trying to warn her neighbor not to open the door. "Don't open it," she kept shouting. But the boy opens the door anyway, and the entity attacks and kills her. Jay is completely devastated. She feels responsible for her neighbor's death. The boy had tried to save Jay out of kindness, and what did he get in return? Death. The shock destroys her. She drives away from her house, terrified that now that her neighbor is dead, the entity will come after her again. Out of fear, she spends the entire night sleeping outside on the road in front of her home. The next morning, she drives to the beach. There, she sees 3 boys having fun. For a moment, a dark thought crosses her mind. Why not pass this curse on to them? But she quickly realizes how wrong that would be. It would be a crime. She returns home, locks herself in her room, and refuses to come out even when someone calls her. Her friend Paul forces her to open the door and tries to talk to her. Jay tells him everything, how she feels responsible for death and how she wants to be free from this life. Hearing this breaks Paul's heart. Her childhood friend can't bear to see her like this. He emotionally tells her, "You're not going to do anything like that. I'll take this burden from you." But Jay refuses. She can't risk Paul's life. Instead, she tells him, "We'll kill the entity and send it back to where it came from, so no one else becomes its victim." She comes up with a plan. Jay, along with her friends and her sister, goes to the school swimming pool. They decide to trap the entity inside the pool. Paul quickly sets up several electrical devices around the water so they can electrocute it. To lure it in, Jay jumps into the pool. Within moments, the entity appears in the form of a man. Since it's an entity, it can hear their conversations and even sense their thoughts. It quickly figures out their plan and starts grabbing the electrical devices, throwing them into the water. When Paul sees this, he starts shooting at it. But because the entity is invisible, he keeps missing his shots. Jay's sister then comes up with a smart idea. She grabs a sheet and throws it over the floating device. The device was actually suspended in midair because the entity was holding it, and when the sheet hit the entity, it made it visible to them. This time, Paul's shot actually connects. The bullet hits the entity and sends it crashing into the water. But it turns out the entity isn't dead. It's now grabbing onto Jay's leg. As Jay tries to climb out of the pool, she starts screaming. In a desperate attempt to save her, Paul fires another shot toward the water near Jay. Eventually, the entity releases her leg, and Jay manages to get out of the pool. The water turns completely red, and they believe the entity has finally been killed. A few days later, we see that Paul has been staying with Jay because she's become increasingly terrified. It's been a while since Paul last saw the entity. He had moved closer to Jay so that even if the entity wasn't actually dead, it would come after him instead of her. But Paul remains unharmed. In the movie's post-credits scene, Paul and Jay are walking together when a shadow appears behind them. That final moment raises a big question. Is the entity really dead, or is it still following them? The film ends with this unsettling mystery. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section, and subscribe to this channel for more stories like this.